So in the last video, we covered clarity. We're talking about management and all things management. And we want to have competent and productive people. And so we talked about clarity in the last one. We're going to talk about measurement in this one. So why is measurement important when it comes to how we manage in business? Well, what we know to be true is what gets measured gets managed. And actually, it's really important that we're managing to measure the right things in our business. So are we looking at the right things? Do we know what our numbers are? Because what gets measured gets managed. So therefore, when we look at something, if it's not quite right, we know we can improve it if we've got a good measurement system in place. So there's three things that we look at when we think about measurement in business. The first one is optimal pressure. Now, often people can talk about pressure and think it's a negative term, but actually we need pressure to manage in life. We need a bit of pressure to be our best. So we don't want too much pressure, but it's getting that nice balance of what is enough pressure to make us go and do something that we wouldn't have done before and therefore achieve what we're all capable of. So a couple of examples of optimal pressure. One might be Muhammad Ali famously had a training session where there was a reporter present and he was doing sit-ups, and the reporter asked, well, how many sit-ups do you do before, or how many sit-ups do you do in training? And he said, well, I have no idea. And the reporter asked, well, why not? And he said, well, I don't start counting until it hurts. And so he knew that at the point that he was starting to get sore, that's where he was putting pressure on himself, pressure to move from his comfort zone out to his growth zone. So he would start to count when it started to get sore, because he knew he was moving from one state of being comfortable and pushing himself to go to another. And we need pressure in our personal lives. Most of us have got mortgages. So we need to provide an income to pay our mortgage, to keep our families, to keep a roof over their head. So those are a couple of examples of where pressure needs to be applied. So it needs to be applied in the right way, at the right time, to help people get better and do as well as they can in their roles. So that's where optimal pressure comes in. The second thing I want to talk about is having meaningful and regular conversations. And I'm really passionate about this, because if we have regular conversations with the people that work with us in business, then it really, really helps to keep that flow of communication going. And so one-to-one should be on a regular basis. Some people do it weekly. Some people do stand-ups daily or huddles with their teams. But actually, one-to-one conversations need to happen regularly. And I would say, certainly no more than a month apart. But not only do they need to be regular in a time frame, they need to be consistent in terms of what you discuss with the team at that time. So the conversations need to make sure that you are talking about the right things. You're talking about the numbers, the KPIs in their role, so the key performance indicators or measures of success. What are the numbers telling them? What are they happy with? What do they think they could improve on? And your job as a leader is to ask your managers what they think they could do better. Get them coming up with what the answers are. Get them coming up with what they think they can do better in the organisation and where they could add even greater value. So we need to be able to have these conversations with them and make sure that we're actually measuring the right things. And I guess the third thing for me is basically making sure that we don't have subjective conversations. So we talk about, in the last video I talked about values, and I talked about having a values document that laid out, what good looks like to behave like round about here and what not so good looks like. So a values document's a really useful thing to have if it's been given a bit of time to be worked on in the organisation. In the last video also, I talked about Clive Woodward and his teamship rules. And if you have those worked out in advance, actually when you need to have a conversation with someone about something that's going really well or something that's going not so well, it just takes the subjectivity away from it, because we've got something we can reference. And we would call that a third thing. So it's almost like something you can lean on to help the conversation with the team. So having those documents there and saying to someone, where do you think you fit on here? How would you score yourself? It's just a really good thing to do, because you've got something to manage the behaviours on. Because quite often we're good at managing the numbers, but we're less good at managing the behaviours and the standards. Because what we want to do is we want to move away from the team making excuses about what's not gone so well, and we want them to take real accountability for their performance and how they are doing in business. And we do this through measuring the right things.